I'm super excited to have Allie Silver today with us. Allie is an American expat that lived for a long time in Buenos Aires. She's now in Berlin and she's the founder of Free Radical Productions, a music management and consulting company specializing in South American artists. Allie has produced over 40 international tours in 36 countries, and she has worked with tons of festivals, tons of venues. She's a speaker at lots of international conferences and universities, Berklee College of Music. She is a true ray of light, and I first met her many moons ago, and I think you're all gonna like that story, but you have to stick to it because we only tell the story at the end of the podcast. So I love Allie. She has the best advice on so many things, from having confidence in yourself, how to go to a place where you don't know anyone and make connections and create roots, and also why it's important to actually care about people that you meet. So without further ado, here is Allie. Hi Allie, I'm really happy to have you here on the I Like Networking podcast.
Welcome. You so much for having me. It's so fun to be here.
And I'm really happy to have you as well. You're much closer to me now.
I know.
Since you're based in Berlin. Please tell us, what is it that you do, where you're from, and what is the worst job experience you've ever had?
Sure. Well, I'll start with the present stuff. So,
yes.
I have my own artist management and consulting company that's called Free Radical Productions. It's been about 8 years now, which is quite some time now that I think about it. I was actually based in Buenos Aires, Argentina for the past 10 years. And about a year ago, I moved to Berlin, where I'm currently based. And I work for management, I mainly work with Argentine clients, but I do consulting. I have a program called Band Therapy, where I consult with bands, VJs, managers from all over the world, helping them do international development and get their projects to the next level where they want them to be. So really the company has three branches. It's artist management. There's the band therapy and the consulting aspect. And then also I do a lot of freelance work helping produce festivals and conferences. I was actually just producing an event called Inshallah that was bringing together artists from the Middle East on different digital platforms to raise money for Lebanon. So I'm always, it all kind of has to do with the music business, but it's sort of scattered here and there, just all different avenues, as you know, that in the music business, we have to always be wearing many hats and be creative to make it work. So yeah, that's where I'm currently at, here in beautiful, sunny Berlin, enjoying the sun while we still have it. And in terms of the worst job I've ever had, this was actually pretty wild and weird. I'm glad that your question is reminding me of this funny story. When you have your own business for so long, obviously there's crazy things and annoying things that have happened. So I can't really, but right before that, I had actually, when I moved to Argentina, I was working for a record label called ZZK Records for a few years, and I ended up leaving the label. And when I did, I'd been in Argentina at that point for just, I think, 2 or 2 years. And I loved Argentina, and I really didn't want to leave. And especially working in the music business, I was thinking, I really want to live here. I want to still work in music. Let me figure out what to do next. And so before I ended up starting my company, which was sort of the solution that I found to be able to work in music and stay, that no one was really going to give me another job there. I had to kind of make it up for myself. I was just going on Craigslist and trying some odd jobs. And I think literally the day after I left, I just looked on Craigslist to see what there was. And there was a job looking for a translator to work on a movie set. And because my degree from Northwestern was in radio, television, film, I was like, perfect. I'm fluent in English and Spanish. I have background studying film. Like, this is the job for me. I'm going to go for it. So I went down to this hotel in downtown Buenos Aires, and there was this guy from the US who was doing this project. And, he just said, jump in, help translate, I'll pay you, blah, blah, blah. And it looked like it was all going to work out. And there were 2 other people there that were going to help on the set translating with the different actors. And we didn't really have, he told us a bit about the film that he was doing, but we didn't really have the full, none of us had the full script nor the actors to really see what the whole story was about. And as the auditions were happening and finding out more and more about this guy as the gig went on, he was kind of this crazy evangelical Christian who was making a movie about the rapture and for sort of evangelical kind of propaganda. And we didn't really know.
Oh my God.
It was wild. It was wild. And so me and the actors and myself, and as this sort of all was going on, not to mention, it'd be one thing if, if this was the case and he was a nice guy and he was religious and, respect for that, even though doesn't share my beliefs, but he was also what actual mental disorder he had, I don't necessarily want to put a label on. It seemed to me to be kind of similar to bipolar, but would literally just be so friendly and happy one day and throw huge mega meltdown tantrums in front of the actors. Like we saw these things, the little signs of it starting to happen in the first week, and would throw huge fits, ended up canceling the whole project a week or two in, throwing a fit, leaving, not paying half of the people. Luckily, I was one of the few people who had gotten paid. And basically, it ended with us, like the sort of translator and the actor's crew, waiting for him by his hotel, trying to get paid before he was like literally not answering the phone in his hotel room and fleeing the country. So that was the worst job I ever had. It was the worst, but luckily it was just so bizarre that it was kind of a wild story and funny adventure. So, luckily it was short-lived, but, it is definitely a fond and funny memory that I look back on the crew, because we lived through so many weird, circumstances in that span of 2 or 3 weeks. We became very good friends afterwards. So it was really all worth it at the end of the day. Just bizarre, to like sort of be finding out piece by piece that you're involved in this sort of like religious film, and then wanting to not be involved and just finishing the job and trying to get paid. It was wild.
That's nuts. But also I haven't never heard of anyone who found a job through Craigslist.
Lesson learned, do not find jobs on Craigslist.
Yeah, exactly. So Ellie, why did you decide to go to Argentina in the first place?
Well, I had studied abroad there in college. I went to school at Northwestern outside of Chicago. And I had done a little exchange program in Spain in high school, and I was looking to do something different. I actually wanted to go to Brazil, but they had a certain language requirement that I would have had to take in advance. And so I wasn't eligible to go. So I said, because I already did speak Spanish. So I was like, okay, well, I'll try Argentina, South America. I want to try something different. A bunch of friends had recommended it to me. And so when I first went down there in 2007, to study at the University of Buenos Aires, literally within the first day, I was like, this is it. I love this city. It is such an amazing energy. It was so fun and spontaneous and had such a rich cultural life and underground music scene that I immediately fell in love with it. So I did my semester there, and then I went back to the States to finish my studies and work for a bit, and then I went back as soon as I could, pretty much, and was there for pretty much 10 years after that. I didn't plan it to be that long, but it just sort of, I was like, oh, I'll go for for a year or two and we'll see how it goes. And then just didn't leave for a long time. It's really
always
great.
like that when we move.
Exactly.
Yeah. You go and you're like, oh, it's just going to be 1 year. It's just going to be 6 months. And then you're like, oh, it's been 7 years.
Yeah, exactly.
But wait, when you went, did you already think you wanted to work with music? Or is that something that you kind of developed on the go?
It was, basically how I sort of figured out my interest in music, because I'm not a musician. People always ask and assume, they think, band managers are kind of like gym teachers, where if you can't teach or like manage, basically, where it's like, if you have a music career that you don't want to do full time, you end up managing other projects. But my path was kind of different. I actually kind of got involved in music less for the music itself, but more for the aspect of travel. I was very fortunate to grow up in a family that would travel a lot over the summers and, travel and exploring the world, and it was always a very big priority for us. And so when I entered that program at Northwestern, radio, television, and film, I ended up volunteering at the radio station and just sort of casually stumbled upon the world music stacks and completely fell in love with it, because it was a way to sort of travel and explore through the arts, through music. So I would just spend the afternoons going through the stacks and, listening to Nova Lima from Peru and playing it on the radio and learning about the story of Afro-Peruvian culture and Garifuna culture from Belize and listening to the music from that and talking about it on the radio. And so I sort of came at it from from that angle. And so I had started to dabble with it. I think my second year in school, I already was sort of managing the world music program at our college station. And then in my third year, which was when I went to Argentina, I was still, looking for different opportunities, but I was still just sort of dabbling and figuring it out. And then coming back from that, in Argentina, I actually went to my first music conference, and I thought, oh, wow, this is cool. This is really interesting. And I got an internship afterwards at the Chicago World Music Festival, where I ended up working for several years. And basically that was like, okay, this is what I want to do 100%. And there's no turning back. Whether it's in festivals or radio or labels, that passion, that was sort of, the fire was lit about exploring the world through music. And I really have not looked back ever since. And that was many years ago now. So, there's many, as my company does in itself, and I've done through the years with label experience or festivals or management or tour management. There's many ways to go about it, but basically sharing music and culture throughout the world. And that exchange was really, really what I felt like part of my life's work was. And obviously as you get older, it changes. But I just, since then, have been kind of doing the same thing in just different forms. And I love it.
Yeah, and I think you are like the perfect person to come on this podcast and to talk to us, because I met you at the World Music Expo in Cardiff, I don't know, 7 years ago or something. And that was my first music conference. And I remember you took me by the hand and you're like, oh, this is who you should meet, and this person and this person. And, I have this group called Women of the World, and I do networking for women in the world music industry. So you were so on it, and you were also so kind to be like, wow, you're new, I'm gonna show you the ropes, First of all, I want to say thank you in public, because you were super nice to me, and I was completely lost until I met you. And also I want you to tell me, like, were you always good at that, and like connecting and creating relationships? How did the whole idea to do Women of the World started? Because I know it's really important in our industry to have, lots of connections, relationships, especially you, because you do so many international tours, right? So,
well, I definitely think I'm a connector type of person. I love people. I'm a people person. I'm very outgoing, as you know. I have no problem going up to people that I don't know and starting up a conversation. But in my experience, the conference that we met at the World Music Expo, I can't remember when it was 12 years ago. This year, it's now going to be online, of course, this year, but I remember going and trying to meet people, and the landscape of the conference was very different at that point in time. I had been working with the World Music Festival a bit and still had my own radio program, but I just didn't feel legit. Everyone was usually male, older, had been in going to this conference for years, and it kind of just felt like this friends club that they all knew each other, and just arriving, I didn't know anyone, and was kind of like the odd one out with my colleague Karima Daoudi as well, that we ended up founding Women of the World together. And so when we first went, my mother has actually been the most amazing networking influence on me always. And when I went, I said, I'm going to go to this conference, but I'm not legit. I don't plan a festival. No one's going to want to talk to me. She said, listen, you have every right to be there. Also, just fake it till you make it. Make a business card with what you do. Go introduce yourself to everyone. You have every right to be there, and act like you have a right to be there, and you will. And so I sort of went into it for the first time with that headspace, just kind of flinging myself at it and giving it a shot. And obviously there were moments, as I said, with that, the sort of club where everyone seemed to know each other, that it felt a little bit weird. But the more I got into it, the more comfortable I felt. And so after that first year, you can apply to do different things at the conference, to do a panel or networking session. And it kind of just started as a pirate idea between my colleague Karima and myself to say, you get free registration to the conference if you propose a panel or a networking session. What do we feel like this conference needs? What's really lacking? And exactly as you said, it was your experience, and my first year as well, it's a conference that's been going on for years, and a lot of people already know each other, and there weren't enough connecting and community events to really bring people in for the first time. So like when someone comes for their first year and they don't know anyone, how can we involve them in the community? How can they get the most out of this conference? How can they meet the people they need to meet? And because we're all there for the same reason, right? We're not there to talk to the same 5 people we know from every year. And so we decided to propose this idea to do Women of the World, which would be an event, as sort of a mini networking group within the bigger conference to bring women together and get to know each other. It was just our second year. We were way younger than everyone else. We didn't really know what was going on. I think we were 21, 22. And we proposed it, and about 40 women showed up the first year. And we're like, whoa, this is something that it looks like people really do need and want to strengthen and nurture this community within the larger Womex community. So it sort of started from there. And we've been doing it every year since, and we would always do it on the first day. So when people like yourself would come for their first time, especially women, especially on the younger side who don't necessarily have all of the industry connections, it's a place where they can come, and we would break, the way we sort of structure it now, it's morphed a bit over the years, is that we break people up into little networking groups and give them a few questions to get to know each other. And so that way, if it's your first time at the conference, you have a small group of 5 people that you're introducing yourself to and getting to know. So then for the rest of the conference, you have a few familiar faces, and that just breaking that ice at the conference and giving people little senses of community opens things up in such a positive way. And so whether it's through Women of the World or just myself in general, from my own experience, when I saw someone like you, Isabel, who's so cool and has so much to offer and should meet all these people, my first impulse is like, come with me now. You're looking for this? Okay, who can we introduce you to? And I had many also wonderful mentors, Deb Cohen being one of them, who really did that for me as well in my first year in Womex. So it's kind of just that karma loop of bringing it back around and giving back to the community. But it's really it's just sort of natural, and it's all for all greater good. We want to be there to meet the right people, and we should all be looking out for each other and introduce each other to the right people, because it will just make the community stronger and more worthwhile.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it was exactly like that, my experience. You're like, oh, you're new. Come to this room with us and let's talk to all these people. And it really made, I was there with a few people that I knew, but obviously made a big difference to go around the corridors and all the booths and actually know some people there and what they did. And really be a bit braver to break the ice, because it can be quite overwhelming. I don't know, for those who haven't been, these music conferences are pretty big and a lot happens during the day, but then you also need to go out at night to see people and to meet more people. So you really have to be kind of on a networking mode 24/7 for a few days.
Networking mode to the point where you lose your voice, like networking mode. Next level.
Exactly.
Everyone is sick. Everyone's lost their voice, but you're happy. You haven't slept, but it's a marathon and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. So so thanks, Allie. That's great. I'm really happy you do that. And I want to know now, how was the process of, starting Free Radical Productions? So you were in Argentina. How did that all come about, and how did you get to meet your first clients?
Well, it's funny. It's really thanks to them that the company exists, because one of my first clients, or my first client, was this duo called Lula Cruza, which is they're no longer playing together, but it's a duo of an Argentine producer and Colombian singer. And the Argentine producers, whose solo project is now Uji, I still work with it. We actually have our meeting right after this call. So many years we've worked together. And they were a group that they had spent a bunch of time touring around the US, and they had a big international following. And the singer sort of had a baby, and they took a little pause. And I was a big fan of their group, just for fun with friends. We had a little collective and had hosted their band at a few events. And, when he heard that I had left my job at the label, he said, oh, well, now you can manage Lula Cruz's comeback. You should be our manager. And my first thought was, ooh, this is a terrible idea. Because as much as I love this band and I love their music and they have a great career ahead, the idea of managing a band, you take a percentage of something that comes in, every few months, independent music. Is this really a stable career path? Is this what I want to do? I've never managed before. However, my job at the record label functioned more as a collective. So we would sort of handle everything for the artist. So their touring, their release schedule, the press. And so I did definitely have a lot of experience from that, and was super grateful for that experience at ZZK Records, who I now still collaborate with a lot. And, he was like, just try it. I know that you have the skills to do it. You'd be the perfect person. Why not? And so I said, okay, well, let me think about it. And I went to a conference actually in Colombia, and a wonderful colleague of mine, Consuelo Arbeláez, she had been an artist manager for many years and is a booking agent. And so I said, what do you think? Should I do it? And she said, listen, I think you should go for it, give it a shot. But there's one thing you need to make sure is never work for free. I don't care if the artists are broke or if they're independent or they pay you 2 pennies. There is something about the exchange of your time and effort and work for money that if the artists don't understand that from day one, they'll never understand it, even if it's something very humble. And I had that thought stuck in my head. And, being, especially as a woman in the music industry, there's so many different things to pick apart there. But I don't want to make it too expensive for them. I just love it, their project, and I just want to do the best I can. And it's very, there are so many experiences throughout the years of toughening of skin and learning where to put those boundaries and having it be awkward and uncomfortable and all of the above. And so what I realized would make most sense for the company, if I were to start this little management company, it would almost start as a consultancy, because many artists need a lot of work up front in the development aspect before they're making money coming in from shows or tours or album sales, and so that could be months and months or even years of your time where money is not really coming in and you're just putting in a ton of effort. So I decided to come up with a structure that was friendly for independent artists and friendly for me as well, that we would meet once a week to work on their projects. I would have a monthly fee that would be enough that would be accessible for them and enough for me that if I had a few different artists, 3 or 4, it would make up what my sort of humble salary at the label was. And so I said, you know what? All right. I love this band. I'm really excited about their music. Let's just give it a shot. I started really, thanks to to Luis's, Uji's invitation, and it moved very fast. Very quick. The universe was like, yes, this is it. Go, 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 go. And so I built up a client roster pretty fast. I had 3 or 4 artists in the beginning. And one of the the only female artist that was on the record label, La Yegros, we had a very special relationship. I would always work on her projects. And when I left the label, one of my biggest regrets was that I wasn't going to be able to see through her first album project that we had been working on so much. And so, we said our goodbyes. We said, listen, we're still good friends and colleagues, and maybe the opportunity will work together in the future. In the meantime, I leave the job at the label. I go off and start my own management company. And the first single from the album project that we had been working on comes out and becomes an overnight hit in France. This is an alternative artist from Argentina. It got picked up by Radio Nova in France, much to all of our surprises. And before we knew it, EMI Parlophone, or it was EMI at the time, then it was sort of bought up by Warner. Now it's currently Parlophone, major label in France, said, who is this artist who's becoming such a success here? We want to sign her. Does she have a manager? And just coincidentally, I had been starting my little fledgling management company, and I was really the closest person to her that could do the job. And so I got hired to do it. And immediately, from open my PayPal account and my few independent artists, I was managing a major record deal like 3 months in, and was just like, they said, oh, can you go to France now? Do you speak French? And I'm thinking like, oh God, do I even remember my high school French? I don't know. And so it sort of took off fast and furious, really, thanks to the artists I had, but especially to that opportunity, kind of putting the business on a global stage. And we ended up working together for almost 5 years and went to over 30 different countries, produced 30 tours all over the place. And it was a lot. So it grew really fast from there, but it definitely, very, very humble beginnings and never what I thought was going to happen, but very glad that it did.
Yeah, and I imagine that was a big learning moment for you because you have to pick everything up at once.
It was kind of like one of those opportunities where you're like pushed in the pool as a kid and you like cough and spit and try and swim out and have to figure out how to survive. It was one of those like awkward moments. So many moments of just not knowing what I was doing and trying to figure it out. But that's how you learn, in many, many industries. But I think especially the music industry, in the past few years, it's gotten better and there have been more programs, but there aren't that many music industry, music business programs, at least not 8 years ago as there are now, that really can show you the ropes. And even if you are shown the ropes in these courses, some of which are fabulous. I do a lot of work with Berklee, Valencia's global music and entertainment program. There's some great things that didn't exist when this first started, but it's, as they say in Argentina, it's all about the cancha experience, like the experience on the court, on the field when you're doing it. And what do you do when it's 7 a.m. in Belgium and one of your musicians has run off with some girl and you all have to take a flight and you don't know where they are? There's experiences like that sometimes you just learn as you go. And that's how you become a good manager, is by, being sort of put in the fire and trying to figure out how to solve it.
Yeah, that was definitely my experience as well. Before I started working with music, I was working in film, and then someone asked me to do something, and then one day this band sat me down and said, I think you should be our manager. And I was like, well, I don't know anything about music. I think the fake it till you make it mentality is very important in the beginning of your career. You just have to go for it, and you will make mistakes, but you shouldn't let them take you down, I guess.
Right. I was listening to a podcast yesterday by actually this Argentine American author who was talking about especially with women in any sort of aspect of life, but especially in business, this sort of cult of perfectionism and imposter syndrome. And, we think that if we haven't done something before, and we don't know if we can do it perfectly, then we shouldn't be doing it. So much of gaining that experience is making mistakes. And in our society, we're not taught how to make mistakes. The amount of mistakes I made was just like, oh God. But, you have to almost know that you can't know how to do things perfectly the first time. It's about how you solve the problem with grace and integrity and humility, and be like, you know what, guys, I fucked up. I'm sorry. I did my best. I'll learn for next time. I find that being able to admit your mistakes, which is something that was very, very hard for my perfectionist brain for many years and still is one of the most important skills as a manager, is to be like, you know what? I did my best and this is all I had for you that day. So I will do better next time, and I'm learning.
Yeah, I really think we receive a lot of questions about that, about imposter syndrome, about having the confidence to actually charge for your services. I think that's all over the spectrum of the creative industries. That seems to be an issue, whether you're doing social media for someone or you're an arts advisor or us, it can be quite daunting. And I did have conversations with clients and artists at once about my value. And if you read, it can be really hard, I think, for you to stand up for yourself, especially at the beginning. But yeah, I don't know if you have any tips for overcoming that, but I think a lot of it is just going for it and getting up again, right?
I love, the times that I've spoken to classes at Berklee or in other places, I love telling the story of how I first started my company, because what happens a lot is that people see these people who are industry professionals who are at the top of their game, or have done 40 tours all over the world, or are, these big people, and they assume that they didn't go through all of the crap that we went through in the beginning, But, everyone has to start somewhere. Everyone has to make mistakes to become the professional that they are today and to know how to do it right. And people kind of just like to erase that part in the middle, but that part in the middle is what I'm most interested in, Whenever, I was speaking to this class and telling them, they said, well, how did you do it? I said, I just opened a PayPal account. I'd never taken an economics class. I just went for it. And I feel like, I often think, going back to the earlier example when I was saying how I'd wanted to study abroad in Brazil. I always think about this, especially when you're in Latin America, as you know, picking up languages, making mistakes, it's all a part of the journey. But I remember being so shocked that I realized after my first year in college that my third year I wanted to study in Brazil. I thought I was so ahead of the game. It was that summer after freshman year, I decided to switch my schedule to sign up for Portuguese class, because you needed a year requirement to be able to go to Brazil on this exchange program. And I said, oh, no, sorry, the Portuguese class is full. You can't do it. I said, oh, well, I need the year requirement to be able to study my third year. Can you make an exception? Can you let me in? And they said, no, you can't. Sorry, it's just, you can't study in Brazil then. It's just, you're too late. There's only 12 spots and that's it. And I was like, wait a minute. First of all, now that you know Portuguese after knowing Spanish, it's pretty easy to pick up. And the fact that people think you need to have so much preparation and so much education to be able to try something new. Like, we're not taught to wing it. And I think winging it is a skill, winging it with education and precision and, going for something. We're thought, oh, well, I need a triple master's degree to be able to do this and that. So much of it is just trying and making mistakes and giving it your all. It's like exactly like learning a language. It's like, if you don't try and speak and mess up, you're never going to learn. And I wish in my heart of hearts that in our society, in our education system, we really open up more flexibility for learning those skills. If everyone's type A and perfectionist and doesn't know how to fail, it doesn't serve us either.
Yeah, I don't understand why they wouldn't let you go to Brazil if you spoke Spanish. I mean,
I ended up in Argentina for 10 years, so it worked out fine.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think it was kind of one of those things like meant to be.
Exactly. I did spend some amazing times in Brazil as well, and so it all worked out in the end.
Yeah, but I agree. Like I always speak about that because my grandfather went to Brazil. He was Polish. He was Jewish, so he had to run away from the Second World War. And he spoke Polish. I don't know. It's like a very different language, if you've ever heard Polish, than Portuguese. So he arrived not knowing anything about this really hot country. And things turned out well, It was just, I think, winging is very important. Just have to keep faith that you can pick up things as you go,
Exactly.
So why did you decide to go to Berlin?
Berlin, when I first went to Argentina, the plan was that, okay, I'm going to go to Argentina for a year or two, and then I'm going to go to Europe. I kind of had always set my sights on Europe as a place where I wanted to settle down and grow roots a bit more, because I think it's so central compared to Argentina, which is so far away. It's so easy to get around. It's easier to visit home in the States. There's so much arts and culture, and just the idea, which obviously since I've been here, I haven't been traveling really because of COVID, but being in a place like Berlin that's so central, it's like, hey, let's go to Spain for the weekend. Let's go to Russia. It's not far, like you're in the middle of everywhere. That if you're a travel nerd like I am, to be able to settle in a central place where, in terms of work, in terms of culture, in terms of exploration, you're really in the middle of it all, always was just sort of very romantic and appealed to me as, okay, if I'm going to grow roots, let it be in a place where I can have all of this around me and it's very accessible. But Berlin, I came to the first time, actually that conference Womex, I was on the jury in 2012 and they flew me out to Berlin to do the jury meeting. And it was the first time I'd ever been there. And since then, I took an extra long weekend off afterwards to explore the city, met some amazing people who are my neighbors and I'm still friends with today. And I completely fell in love with it, sort of in the same way that I did with Buenos Aires. Said, okay, I love Buenos Aires. I'm super happy where I am right now. But when I go to Europe, it's Berlin. And I was very fortunate because through touring and always being on the road with my artists and, Europe was sort of the main touring market that we would hit, I would always spend time in Berlin. So let's say we would come through to play some shows in Europe and then I'd come to visit Berlin and stay for a few weeks or come for a month over the summer. It also helped. It was winter in Argentina when it's European summer. So I would spend a lot of time here throughout the years and just figured, one day when I'm ready, I'll make the switch over. Last year, I guess it was last year now. Yeah. I just sort of felt that the time was right. I was like, I love Argentina. I've put down some great roots here, but I feel like more and more Europe is calling me. There's more opportunities for conferences and festivals, which is sort of the area that I want to head towards, a little less management in the future and focusing more on those sort of community events and planning those. It just sort of seemed like a more natural fit. And I said, okay, well, I'll just apply for the visa and see what happens. I have a tour anyways over the summer. And boom, it came through. It kind of surprised me. So I was like, all right, this is it. Let's give it a whirl. And so I came and have been so happy to be based here ever since. It was just, I feel like the time was right to come and I feel just really enriched being here, even with COVID and with everything going on. It's such a vibrant place. And I just feel so grateful literally every day. It's even more with COVID because things have been so flexible here compared to other places. Every day I just meditate and thank the universe for the opportunity to be in this beautiful place surrounded by so many interesting artistic people, events, things. It's just an amazing opportunity. So I'm just taking it day by day and enjoying every minute I can while we are free to do so. In the winter, we'll see how that goes.
But Allie, so did you know anyone in Berlin when you...
Yes, I did have some kind of, I mean, luckily I had been visiting regularly over the past few years. My cousin lives here, which is amazing to feel like I have family here and we're very close. Also, yeah, just literally from coming over the summers, two of my best friends in the world were living in Berlin for the past few years. When I would come over the summers, I would usually stay with them and hang with their friends. And both of them have since left, unfortunately, but they have left me the legacy of some wonderful friends here. So between getting to know people through that and having my cousin here and having some work colleagues here, it's obviously always a transition moving to a new city. And in Argentina, I'd been there so long. I have so many deep relationships and friendships, but luckily, it was relatively easy to pick up and get started. I feel like when I was here in the fall, because the visa thing sort of came through over the summer. And so I was here August through end of November. And then when the weather got cold, I decided then to go back to Argentina, officially move out. I had a work opportunity in Bali. So I was like, perfect. I can avoid the winter and then come back. The fall was nice, but it was sort of, I still felt very like transitioning into the city. And since I've been back, and a bit more rooted here and have my own place here now, I feel much more grounded and like I have a really beautiful network of people here that I love. So, obviously it strengthens over time and it's still relatively very new, but I feel very much at home here, which is great.
Yes. And then I think, you of course do lots of things besides managing, but were you able to continue working with some bands and artists in Argentina? Or did you have to change your whole business model when you moved? And on top of that, the pandemic came. So how did you adapt? Because the music industry suffered a lot, is suffering a lot.
Yeah, is suffering, definitely. I mean, I think that the most difficult transition was not the move. It was more so the pandemic, because most of my work is done remote anyways. Like, obviously, it's nice to have FaceTime with the artists in Argentina, but I do have agents who manage their local shows in Argentina. And my focus, especially being American myself and always going to all these conferences, was more the international vision and development for the project. So, planning their European tours in the US, Australia, meeting with the labels, all of that. So, even in Argentina, one of my groups, Femina, one lives in Patagonia and two live in Buenos Aires. It's very rare that we're all together unless there's something special going on in Argentina specifically. If Clary, who lives in Patagonia, would come up to Buenos Aires. So we're very used to working digital as is. And so that was really less of an issue. It was more so that with management, the good majority of our income was coming in from touring, and all touring was canceled and is canceled really till further notice. So the transition was more so that. But I don't know. Obviously, like, I would never wish such misfortune on the music industry, but I think it's something that at the end of the day will make it much more sustainable and stronger. It's been such a crazy, unsustainable model of working that, people or musicians, tour managers, we work ourselves to the bone on the road constantly because it's the only way to make money really in the business, or to make interesting money in the business. So, we run ourselves dry, we deplete ourselves, we aren't taking proper care of our health and our creativity and our well-being. And so this pause, I think, in so many ways, and for all of my artists, has been a blessing in terms of reconnecting with creativity, reconnecting with family, grounding, analyzing what's most important. Obviously, we don't want to never play shows again. Of course, as soon as we can, we would be so excited to, but I'm hoping that when we do come back and things, whenever that is, the industry will have had to, be resilient and morph in different ways that will make things more sustainable for the future. So there's definitely a lot of question marks at the present moment. Luckily, consulting I do on Skype, so I've been able to do that. I've been working on, events like this online festival I mentioned. So, there luckily are little bits of things here and there. But, from being an entrepreneur and having your own business and constantly being on the road, sort of unlearning my workaholic tendencies has been really healing and therapeutic during this time. So, I think like everything in life, it's like life gives you lemons and make whatever you can with it, It's like, what is the challenge of the moment and what can we learn from it and how can we turn it into something positive and what can we take away from it? So definitely lots to sort out, but I've been very much enjoying the lessons of the moment. And we'll see. It's kind of, that's the adventure, right? Is we don't know how it's going to play out and how it's going to play out. And I think that, we are a creative industry and we are the creative minds of the world. So if anyone can come up with creative solutions of how to reimagine this thing, it's us. So I have faith and I have a good feeling that what's next to come will be better than the past.
I agree. I love that. I think that's a great note. Allie, you gave so much good advice, I think, so far. But if you could give anyone starting in the music industry today any piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh God, the idea of starting in the music industry now. Actually, something I was thinking about, my biggest piece of networking advice for anything, but it's sort of been my trick in the music industry, as we spoke about, it's all about relationships. And my approach for networking and for meeting new people and establishing yourself and creating contacts is always to think about whoever you're meeting as a friend. We are all here. And that's one of the things that Womex really taught me and showed me, and one of the reasons why I love it so much is that to be surrounded by 3,000 other people from all over the world whose passion was my passion of exploring the world through its music and connecting music and culture and exchanging, taking a band from Argentina and sending them to Russia and sending a band from Russia to Argentina, creating those cultural connections and seeing all these different faces that were so excited and so passionate by the same thing. And as opposed to approaching them as, ooh, there's that well-known French booker that I have to talk to, and sort of seeing it from that cold, clear cut, okay, I need something from this person perspective. Look at it from, wow, of all the people in the world, I have a lot in common with this person because we're in this same place and we have this same life goal and passion. And so if you approach them in that aspect of like, hey, it's nice to meet you, wanting to get to know people for who they are and what you share in common, as opposed to just sort of like, what can I get out of them? I find that that's sort of been my biggest success networking, is because most of my contacts are not people that I approached because I needed something from them in that day, or maybe I did, but I didn't ask, really gaining trust, human to human connection. And then when you need a favor, you have that true connection with someone that you can ask for it. And maybe they say no, but either way, I find that that's how I built 99% of my relationships in the business. And it's kind of the only way that I know how to do it. And at least for me, it seems to work because it's kind of, I'm one of those people who like, I can't lie. I have no poker face. Like I'm not good at hiding my emotions. And so if I'm generally just excited and interested to meet a person, that's what resonates with me. And I think other people pick up on that. And so they don't feel like, oh, this person just wants my business card. They just want to play at my festival. They say, hey, wow, this person wants to get to know me. And if we do business in the future, cool. And if not, that's cool too. And it creates that trust. So I guess that would be my biggest piece of advice, because at the end of the day, it really brings you down to the question, why are you here? Why are you at this World Music Conference? Why is it important to you? It brings you back to the core values of why you're doing what you're doing, as opposed to just trying to climb up a ladder. And that's also one of the reasons why I'm very into the more alternative and cultural aspects of the music industry than I always tell people, if I could be Shakira's manager, I wouldn't. It's a whole different ball game and a different type of person, and it's a different type of job. And it's not really what I'm about personally. So yeah, but whether it's music business or something else, always being connected to that authentic reason of why you're there and why you're doing what you're doing, and be able to connect with people on that level. At least for me, it worked.
Yeah, definitely, Allie. And you're such a great person to have around for all things, for having a beer, for going to a concert, and for getting people to introduce you. It's amazing. I'm happy that people used to think that I was your sister at Womex. That was a great experience.
I know. You know why I realized that as well is because my ancestors are Polish also. So even though I'm from the US and you're from Brazil, I was like, we probably are definitely related somehow in the Jewish-Polish down the line somewhere.
I think so. I think we're like the short people at Womex that everyone assumed just because we were short, we were supposed to be sisters.
Yeah, exactly.
But if I could be anyone's fake sister, I'm very happy that I could be yours. Thank you for listening to the I Like Networking podcast. Please remember to share, subscribe, and review the podcast so that more people can find us. All the information discussed on this episode will be on the show notes. See you next time.